More people than ever, record numbers, crossing our southern border. Why has it gotten worse, essentially, in terms of apprehensions of what we're seeing under the president who you're supporting?
Because he's trying to add consequences, but the courts keep holding him up. Look, he tried to fix the asylum, say you can't enter the country legally to claim asylum, you need to go to port of entry. That was held up. He's trying to detain people, but the Ninth Circuit says you can't detain people over 20 days. Everything he's done to add consequences to this has been held up in the courts. And the Congress has failed to address anything. Look, he's the only guy addressing the border crisis. Give me one idea, give me one example of anybody in Democratic leadership offering up one idea on what's going on the border. As you said, children are dying, women are being raped. You know, we're at an all-time high in crossings of families and the most vulnerable of people. Drug cartels are making billions of dollars, and Democratic leadership has offered up what?
Yeah, no,
they're not even talking about it.
Well, they won't appropriate for additional housing and beds to deal with this crisis. You talk about Congress, you talk about the crisis. Even if Obama administration officials are recognizing that it is. But there's one piece of evidence we want to put in front of you that sort of underscores what a crisis it is. It's overcrowding at the El Paso del Norte Processing Center. So this is a place on May 7th, it was holding 750 detainees. The next day, May 8th, 900 detainees. The kicker on this is that the maximum capacity all along has been 125 people. So the agents there are doing the best they can. But if your resources are that constrained, it's only going to get more difficult.
Exactly. Because they've had to pull so many border agents off the line to deal with these families and medical runs and taking care of the most vulnerable, 40% of every Border Patrol agent, 4 out of 10, are not on the line. They're in the stations taking care of these people. So think about the vulnerability on the border right now. As I said many times, the criminal cartels are managing who comes across, where they come across. So knowing 40% of the border is off the border, and knowing they'll push that group of 1,000 in El Paso and keep the Border Patrol tied up so they can move drugs and bad people to another area that don't want to get caught by the Border Patrol. Our border is very vulnerable right now. We're in a state of crisis. If we don't make some changes very soon, we're going to lose this border because ICE is ran out of beds. And if they have to start releasing single adults, then all bets off. Because when you start releasing single adults, and you're going to get the whole world coming here to take advantage, because that's the one population that remained pretty steady. In that group of 1,000, only 40 more single adults. Because single adults are being detained.
Only 40 were partisan consensus on.
We'll be out of control. We will lose the border, and we won't get it back.
Coming to us live from a border state there in Arizona, getting up extra early to be on Fox and Friends. We appreciate it, sir.
You know your stuff. Thank you, Tom.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We are turning to some headlines for you now. A body found in Arkansas is believed to be missing 4-year-old Malia Davis. Her stepfather led police to the area where he admitted to dumping the little girl. Davis was reported missing in Texas last month. Darian Vance is in jail on tampering charges in connection with the case. A lawyer for Facebook making a bizarre claim about the Cambridge Analytica scandal. The attorney argues the 87 million users affected in the breach did not have their privacy invaded because they have no expectation of privacy on the site. The argument was slammed by the judge, who noted the social media giant has repeatedly promised to protect users' data. An accountant for the alleged mastermind behind the college admissions scandal is agreeing to plead guilty. Rick Singer's bookkeeper is accused of collecting money from parents disguised as charity donations and using them to bribe administrators for tests like the SAT. 50 people have been charged in the case, including actress Felicity Huffman, who pleaded guilty to paying $15,000 to rig her daughter's SAT score. And special counsel Robert Mueller isn't the only Mueller making political headlines. This adorable golden retriever, Max Mueller II, is the mayor of his Southern California town. Oh yeah, the town has been electing dogs as its mayor for several years to promote their local animal shelter. Mueller's oath of office reads, "I, Max, do swear on my food bowl to faithfully execute my duties as mayor of Idlewild." Hopefully I said that right. Those are your headlines. I fully support this. Perhaps next we'll see dogs for president. It could happen.
I wonder if young Mueller will come out and make a statement this week.
It could happen.
Yeah.
I can't even speak.
Rick, you love dogs.
Listen, dogs are the most loyal, honest, I was going to say people, but entities that I have encountered. It would be a good deviation from the political norm. Rick?
True, but I think their platform might be a little bit off base.
Little slanted.
Little slanted?
Skewed. Yeah.
Is there like a lieutenant mayor that actually does the work?
Listen, good food and naps sound good to me.
Less government is better government, so I'm all for it.
There
That's
you
true,
go.
Pete. This is right up your alley, Pete. I got to tell you. All right, guys, let's talk some weather because there's a lot going on, including all of the rain that we've had across parts of the Central Plains and a little bit of a cool. Look at the weather map, show you what I'm talking about. Temps have been so hot all across the southeast. You're aware of it for the better part of 2 weeks. A bit of a front has passed through, and take a look at that. It's 68 degrees right now in Atlanta, and the humidity is down, so it feels almost like fall. Get outside and enjoy this morning. It's not going to last too long. Precipitation-wise, things are pretty good in the central part of the country where we've had all that rain over the last, say, 2 weeks. Or say 6 months, but the last 2 weeks, it's dry right now. And out across the west, things are also looking pretty dry. So right now, things are pretty calm. That doesn't mean the flooding is gone. If you're there, you're aware we've got flood stages well above major across the Arkansas River, the Mississippi River, some of them into the record level stage. So that doesn't change anytime soon. And unfortunately, the rain returns. So the weekend, not that bad. But take a look at what happens this coming week. We've got the rain going right back to the exact same spots. That means our flooding threat is going to continue for the better part of this coming week. One last story. Today is the beginning of hurricane season. It goes now through November 30th. Expecting average hurricane activity this year. In June, normally you might see about every couple of years some sort of a tropical system. Take a look at that right there just in towards the Gulf of Mexico. A little bit of tropical activity. We're going to watch for development. And that could increase our moisture as well across parts of the Central Plains later on this week. All right, guys, back to you.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it.
Who let the dogs out? All right. A historian.
You thought that up the whole time.
You were thinking about that the whole time.
A historian who correctly predicted the last 9 presidential elections says President Trump will be reelected in 2020 unless Democrats do this.
The Democrats grow a spine.
Correctly called the last 9 presidential elections, and he's predicting re-election for President Trump in 2020, except for one thing.
You think Trump is it in 2020 unless what?
Unless the Democrats grow a spine and do their constitutional duty and move into an impeachment inquiry, and I think the evidence will show ultimately an impeachment.
So is that why Democrats keep pushing impeachment? Here to react, chairman of the American Conservative Union and former White House political director for President George W. Bush, Matt Schlapp. Matt, talk about an admission that you can't win on the issues. I mean, that's what that sounds like to me, what he just said.
Yeah, and it's important to remember what the criteria this professor uses to determine his prediction on who's going to win. And it's all it's a scientific formula on the growth of the economy, the unemployment rate, and this data that is not subjective, Jedediah. So here's what this means. It means a coup is the only way the Democrats can get rid of Donald Trump, because the number one reason why people vote for president in America is on the strength of the economy and the pocketbook and how do they feel about their economic situation and their kids' economic situation. And President Trump has been over 50% in his approval on the economy for a very long period of time. People feel more confident about the American economy than it did at any time during the Obama administration.
So let's just say Democrats go with impeachment. Let's say they do it. Let's say they're successful in that endeavor. What does that look like for them? How does that play out?
Well, here's the problem, Jedediah, for the Democrats is that Nancy Pelosi, some people believe she got the majority in the House because of people like AOC. But the real truth is that they won in a lot of more purple House districts with more moderate members than it appears like these national Democrats who are saying absolutely crazy socialist radical things. So if you look at impeachment, you have this more radicalized voice in the House and Senate that are pushing their leaders to, quote unquote, grow a spine, as the professor said, which means coup. But the reason why the Democrats have a majority in the House is because a lot of moderate voters in these districts turn to them. Those moderate voters don't believe that we should drag this country through a year of impeachment hearings and proceedings and not focus on what actually ails the country, the problems of the country, and try to fix it. So they're in a really tough spot. You know, sometimes it seems like Nancy Pelosi actually seems like she might be the more calming factor,
yes.
Which is an amazing thing to say.
How times have changed, Matt. How times have changed.
Right.
And Obama's sounding like a moderate lately compared to AOC and the rest of the crew. I'm just wondering why they're so afraid.
He has better marketing. He has better marketing.
Yes. But why are Democrats so afraid? Listen, if you support the Green New Deal, if you support Medicare for all, If you believe that those things will help the country, if you support economic plans that are in drastic opposition to the ones that President Trump has put forth because you actually believe that they will work, my sense is that you wouldn't be terrified to go out there and talk about them. It seems to me like they are admitting that those things will not work and will not appeal to American voters right now, which is why they're completely silent on them. And all they're talking about is impeachment and investigations 24 hours a day.
Ideology. It's all their socialist idealism. The problem with it is it hurts people when they put it in practice. And there's a little bit of a fracture in that majority. So they really can't get any of these things done because even not all Democrats want to be socialists.
It's all very utopian and academic, Matt.
Sure is. And scary. And scary.
Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate your input as always.
Thank you.
Protesters tried to silence our next guest while speaking at a college campus. Now a new study reveals just what students think about free speech. Michael Knowles weighs in coming up next.
4,000 students attempts to shed some light. 41% say hate speech should not be protected by the First Amendment, while another 68% agree students can't share their true opinions on campus. Nearly 7 in 10 can't share it. Our next guest has some experience being protested on campus. Liquid was thrown at him while he was speaking on the University of Missouri, Kansas City in April. Michael Knowles joins us now. Michael, thanks for being here. So my understanding of the First Amendment is it's not there to protect the easy speech. It's there to protect the stuff we don't like. Why don't kids get that?
Of course. If the First Amendment doesn't protect so-called hate speech, then what's the point of it? You don't need a constitutional amendment to protect popular speech. You need it to protect speech that is unpopular, which some people might define as hateful, but then who's the one who's doing that defining? The problem here is primarily one of ignorance. Thomas Jefferson said that a nation that wants to remain ignorant and free in a state of civilization is hoping for something that never was and never will be. But according to another survey, just 40% of Americans can name any of the rights protected by the First Amendment. Only 56% know that the First Amendment protects free speech. This is a problem primarily of ignorance. Another survey showed that students graduating from elite colleges know less about their civics, less about their government than they did when they were going in. As President Reagan said, freedom is not passed in the bloodstream. You have to teach the next generation. If you don't do it, we're going to lose it very soon.
Michael, you've seen this firsthand. But you mentioned Thomas Jefferson. You know, he's not. You can't have him anymore. They're protesting him. But you talked about it's ultimately who's doing the deciding. Who's the one that decides what's hate speech? And in our politically correct world, which it often is, who is making that call?
Of course, when I was physically assaulted at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, the phrase that was considered hate speech is the phrase, men are not women. If you say, I gave another speech at Cal State LA, I said that the United States should have national borders. I was protested and told that that was hate speech. It's always a subjective question when it comes to what is hate speech and therefore what shouldn't be protected. The argument that they make is that certain speech is violent and it harms people. But actually, there was a study last year, 2018, that showed that so-called trigger warnings and safe spaces and all of this censorship is actually harming the students that it intends to help because it leaves them psychologically fragile. They should learn that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Michael, I'll go out on a limb and say you are a man. Maybe the man. Okay, Michael, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Pete.
All right, unlike her Hollywood friends, Meryl Streep takes a stand against toxic masculinity, saying the term hurts our boys. The backlash coming up next.
He was like moving around, and the woman was like, I think the baby is dancing. And it was funny because there was music on in the room, and I was dancing. So I was like, well, this is definitely my baby.
Again, because you revealed
he's a little boy.
Earlier in the show, it's going to be a little boy, and we've been asking for names, and they're pouring in.
Oh my goodness!
Boy, I'm ready.
Keep sending them. Friends at FoxNews.com. Here's a few.
Email from Tina. I have a couple of suggestions actually. Remington and Lawson.
I actually like that. That's very
Not bad.
nice. We have an email from Dana.
That's right.
How
you
about
don't get to read this.
Yeah,
we
no,
read
I have to read it?
you.
Oh, okay.
How about Obadiah? It's a biblical name, and you could call him Obi.
Obi's cute.
Obi for short. I like that. I have some biblical ideas too.
Well,
not yet.
How about this one? James says Archimedes, considered one of the greatest mathematicians of all time. Nickname of Archie. German origin name meaning truly brave.
Archie is cute, but we have a cat named Archie. My parents have a cat named Archie, so all I think about is Archie. Archibald.
And the royal baby, Archie.
That's true.
In honor of the greatest morning hosts ever, Jedediah should name her baby Pete Ed Aya.
Oh,
That is from Katie.
Katie, thank you.
Wow.
that's actually
I
a
don't know what to
fantastic
say.
combination.
Pete
Very
Ed Aya.
creative. Much more creative than I've been.
I like that. I looked it up, some biblical ones. I thought so too. I thought Jericho. I'm going with J.
Jericho's cute.
Jericho Bila, maybe Jeconiah. I don't know.
Jeconiah.
God
That's
will
too
establish. Or what if you went really bold and you went with Jerusalem Bila?
How about Abraham Bila, AB?
AB?
Wow.
I
All right,
like
now,
that.
now you guys are just throwing them all at me.
Yeah.
And
Keep
by
them
the way,
coming. We're having fun with it.
Solange, if you're watching, you got to step up, man.
That would be
because
Mom.
you are
Mom,
the
where
name
are you?
queen,
Mom is
and you
MIA.
can't go MIA when I need you. You got to step up.
But the front runner is currently Pete Ed-Aya.
Yeah,
I like
mean,
it.
let's be real. How
All
could
right,
it not
so
be?
we'll keep them coming. Friends at FoxNews.com.
Thanks, guys. I love
In the
'em.
meantime, we'll keep up the fun, and we're also getting to some serious news. The president raising the stakes again in his efforts to crack down on illegal immigration. Now the president threatening these tariffs of 5% on Mexican goods coming into our country, says it's going to keep escalating if they don't actually act to deal with the crisis, eventually capping out at 25%. There's been great reaction to this. Some of the president's supporters cheering him on, while the reaction on the other side, critics saying that this is going to really not just hurt the Mexican economy, but hurt the American
Critics
economy.
always say it will. They say the same thing about China trade, when what President Trump is saying is, I'm playing a longer game, a bigger game. And in this case, about our sovereignty, the fact that it is being violated on a daily basis. I believe the foreign minister of Mexico is traveling to D.C. today, their Secretary of State. This will be a big topic of that. But the context for it all as well is the crisis continues and grows even more. This is a headline that caught our eye. It said the surge of migrants at the southern border, migrants apprehended, expected to hit a 12-year high, and it feels like every day we're hitting a new high.
That's from CBS.
Definitely not a manufactured crisis. And that's what's really important to note here, is that this was painted by so many in media, so many Democrats, as manufactured for so long. Now, so many Americans are seeing those numbers come out and realizing something needs to be done. President Trump has been backed into a corner. He has not gotten help from Democrats. He is facing up against many court challenges that are to come. Some have started already. And he's saying, what do I do? So that was the origin of this tariff plan. Him saying, listen, I need to put something
What do we do
in
with
place,
that?
this 5% tariff, because I don't know how else to get people to understand that something needs to be done about this humanitarian crisis, and it needs to be done today.
Yeah.
Now, in response to what he has done, the media has predictably fallen right in line and had one real reaction, and that is tariff hysteria. Check it out.
Well, Tariff Man is back. The president is threatening a new country with new tariffs, this time Mexico.
It sounds muy fuerte, very strong, but whom will it squeeze? Us or Mexico?
No mistake about it. U.S. consumers will bear the brunt of these tariffs.
Whether it's a negotiating tactic or an attempt to distract, it's still surprised everyone.
Nothing short of a political stunt.
So, I don't know. Maybe it was changing the subject from Mueller. I can't figure it out.
I think that's got to be a thing. Tariff man.
With a big T. That's T
No
for Trump,
nuance
T for
there
tariff.
from
Oh,
the media.
my
And, it's
None.
one thing for if they had guests on that noted the potential impact that this could have negatively on the American economy, and you want to explore that. Fine, that's a respectable opinion that many people share. But you also have to then have enough nuance to note why he has been backed into this corner and what has made him go and take this course of action.
Well, the Mexican president has reacted, expected that he would react with anger, but went a step further, really, and decided to sort of lecture President Trump and maybe all Americans about American values. President Obrador saying social problems are not resolved with taxes or coercive measures. The Statue of Liberty, he says, is not an empty symbol.
A lot of people say that this is going to hurt the chances of getting a USMCA. By the way, Nancy Pelosi could bring that forward in the House right now and it would pass. That trade deal is acceptable to a lot of Democrats. But you hear the Mexican president talking about our Statue of Liberty. He's giving us a lecture. You know the famous part of the inscription on the Statue of Liberty: "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses." Well, it goes on to say in that inscription, "Send these, I lift my lamp beside the golden door." That has been Trump's. And if Trump built the door, it would be golden, and he would let a lot of people in, as he has said. The idea is we need a wall because we need to control what's happening. And I think if you take the long view on this, the courts are scuttling him. Congress is not going to do anything until 2020. This becomes yet another rallying, if at all, but it becomes another rallying cry for 2020. Reelect me, get some Republicans in the House, and we will build this border wall. The court process will work its way through, and we'll put big golden doors on that wall so that legal immigration could happen. But this bum rush through a fence of 1,000 people, that is not, Tom Homan says it. We don't have a border in this case. Democrats are saying they want to keep doing that. That is not a viable general election approach.
Yeah, we actually actually have Tom Homan talking about that tariff.
I didn't even know that.
Talking about how Trump needs to hold Mexico accountable. Take a listen.
The Mexican government is not doing enough. We talked about many times. Criminal cartels in Mexico are operating with impunity. I mean, in broad daylight, they're trafficking in women and children, which is illegal in the country Mexico. But the government has done nothing. I would tell the president of Mexico this: bad behavior stops when there's consequences and deterrence. So unless you have a consequence and deterrent, the bad behavior continues. This president is trying to put consequences. If you violate the laws of this country, if you come here and commit immigration fraud, we're going to hold you accountable. And he's holding Mexico accountable now.
And Tom loves these tariffs, so I think these tariffs, Mexico's going to pay for the golden door. I think that's the takeaway. So you can turn the channel. No,
the question will be, Mexico pays a price, but what kind of price will American corporations?
We hear that over and over.
Well, but General
and over
Motors stock was down, 5% yesterday?
A very resilient, what's gone up, it's gone down. That's what the stock market does. We have a very resilient, robust economy. When you have a strong economy, it's the time to make some of these changes when you can absorb it. And you see farmers and others giving him the benefit of the doubt because they look at the long game.
We have to pay these farmers now because they're struggling so much.
That's a temporary price to pay.
I think that's a valid point that you're making, Ed. The problem is, what else does he do? Because he feels like he was elected with a mandate to address this issue. He was talking about immigration when no one was talking about immigration. He's still talking about immigration. He's getting no help from anyone. So now he's at a point where he says, is this a short-term...
restricting abortion rights, pro-life measures that have really caught the attention of folks on the right who support the president, saying they want to see these measures. And then you see Democrats like Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, saying, wait a second, not so fast, getting all fired up. And so now he has this proclamation on reproductive freedom, saying that he wants to, quote, welcome women to California to fully exercise their reproductive rights and acting as a model for other states that want to ensure full reproductive freedom for women.
Now Gavin Newsom wants to be an abortion sanctuary state. That's what he wants to be. These other states, many of which, great laws, heartbeat laws saying we protect life. Gavin Newsom, is that really this is where we are as a country.
Yeah,
on all issues, you've got certain states saying we value life, and Gavin Newsom saying, come on in, abortions for everybody.
Yeah, I think on this particular issue, you are going to see a great divide across the countries with how the governors are handling this. You're going to have states that are completely polar opposite on this, and people are going to have to decide. This is what actually determines for a lot of people, though, where they want to live, what type of environment they want to be in, what the values that are being espoused by the leadership of those places are, and it remains to be seen how this is going to go in each state.
States are making their call, but eventually the Supreme Court is going to weigh in on this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Georgia, one of those states with one of those state laws I mentioned, restricting abortion rights. Rush Limbaugh yesterday talking about how now Disney and other media companies are out there saying, you know what, we're not going to film movies anymore, perhaps in Georgia, if this law is not struck down. Limbaugh pointing out the hypocrisy of all of that. Watch.
This is just, it's hypocritical and crazy. Disney is a company founded on programming and facilities for children. And the abortion law in Georgia is designed to save and protect children. And we can't have that. We can't have, the way Disney's looking at this, we can't have our audience protected. We can't do business in a state that's looking out for our audience and our future audience. We can't have. We've got to leave that state.
Yet, the left.
Great point.
It is a great point, and the left can't acknowledge that they're children. But every time you look at a sonogram of the baby inside you, how can you not look at that and see it as a person? And I've come to really like the approach of the heartbeat bill because when are you deemed dead? When you no longer have a heartbeat. When should you be deemed alive? When in the womb you have, that's a pretty common sense way you could look at it.
And Disney obviously has a right to do whatever it wants with its business. It can pull out if it wants, but it needs to be strategic about this. And I think that point by Rush Limbaugh is something they should really be thinking about. Who is your audience and how will they feel about this decision if you go through with it?
Meanwhile, some shocking new numbers.
In El Paso, Texas, holding 7 times the legal limit of migrants. So doesn't this show that there really is a crisis at the border? Here to weigh in is retired Army General Anthony Tata, the former deputy commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan and co-author of the brand new book, Reaper Threat Zero. General, thanks for being here. We will get to the book. You know, you could pump them out like anybody else. I'm excited to read this. Before we get to the topic, you mentioned to me right before we came on air, you're from Virginia Beach.
Born and raised Virginia Beach. And Pete, I just want to tell you, I've got a lot of friends in the police force there. Know the mayor, know the police chief. My heart's with them today, this morning, last night. Texts all night this morning, and the law enforcement community has done a great job, and the community in Virginia Beach is is really coming together there, and I'm just really proud of them and shocked by what happened.
Absolutely, well said. We are all thinking about them for sure. Hits home even more when it's your hometown.
Yeah.
But to this issue on the border of overcrowding at facilities, Congress hasn't appropriated for them. Border Patrol doing the best they can. DHS with what they have. What do you make of it?
Yeah, overcrowding is a symptom of the problem, Pete. And so the Democrats refuse to work with the president on this issue. And the president is showing strong, great leadership by trying to leverage every element of national power to protect this country. And we are being invaded from the south by these caravans that come up here. And anybody who doesn't think for a second that there's bad actors in those caravans, we know for a fact that there's terrorists coming in, there's criminals coming in, and they're dumping into our country. They're using unmanned aerial vehicles to get over the border.
Or we don't even know who they are because they're not in the caravan,
That's right.
and they're using that distraction to go somewhere else.
That's right. It's all very intentional, and the president is showing great leadership here with the tariffs. It's an element of national power.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah. So economic power to bring Mexico to the table and say, Mexico could end up paying for the wall and building their own down south to try to, get a handle on this issue. And it's just, this administration is leveraging diplomatic, information, economic, military power better than any administration in my lifetime that I've seen. So I'm so glad that the president has this strong leadership on the border.
Absolutely. Do you, based on what you know in the area, he's threatened these tariffs to go up each month, 5% up to 25%. Yeah. Do we get to the 25?
Yeah, I think so. Unless Mexico is going to set some land speed records here, I think we get to the 25, and I think that's going to hurt their business, and that president's going to have to get his act together, and it's an important thing that we're doing.
Let's talk about the book real quick, Reaper Threat Zero.
Yeah, so Reaper Threat Zero, Nick Irving, Army Ranger, and I co-author on this series, and Nick's a great sniper from Afghanistan. He's Army Ranger, had 33 kills in 90 days, and they call him the Reaper. His Ranger buddies loved him, and we've co-authored on this second in the series. It's doing very well. It's a sniper novel. It's a thriller. It's a great Father's Day gift. It's a great beach read, Memorial Day, and it's the log line is that the administration has a family day. Bad guys ambush the families, and then the Reaper gets sent overseas to kill the families.
Don't give it all away, though. Don't give it all away. If you want to be inside what it's like to be a sniper, Reaper Threat Zero. General, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Pete. That's your copy.
All right. Oh, outstanding. All right. Actress Meryl Streep shocking the left when she took a stand against toxic masculinity. Our own Rachel Campos Duffy agrees, and she's up next.
Across the UK during President Trump's state visit next week, hundreds of thousands of protesters expected to hit the streets. The main protest planned for Tuesday in London. It'll be just yards from where the president and resigning Prime Minister Theresa May will be having lunch. Meanwhile, former President Obama takes a shot at America, it seems like, on foreign soil. The 44th president telling an audience in Brazil that America was founded on inequality, saying, quote, even though the United States has a constitution that says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, at that time, not only were blacks excluded, but women were excluded, and people who didn't own property were excluded. That from former President Obama. Jed?
Thanks, Ed. Actress Meryl Streep taking a stand against the concept of toxic masculinity.
We hurt our boys by calling something toxic masculinity. I do. And identifying those and putting those two words together, it's because women can be pretty toxic.
Here to react is Fox News contributor Rachel Campos Duffy. Rachel, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jedediah, and congratulations on your first. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you, and congrats on your soon-to-be 9th. You are my hero. I've said this many times. I want to get to this Meryl Streep thing. I'm fascinated by this. I'm still waiting to see if she's going to walk these comments back, if she's going to face pressure from the media for saying this. But I love this, that she said this, because toxic people, to me, come in all shapes and sizes. It has nothing to do with gender. Why put that potential label on boys from day one?
Yeah, bravo to her for saying it, and she is actually doing a great job of just generating this national conversation about this term that is so dangerous towards boys. But it's not just bad for boys because they can't help being boys, they can't help being masculine, they can't help liking trucks and wanting to, make them crash into each other. That's who they are. But it's also bad for women, and it shows how out of touch the feminists are, because I talk to young women around the country, and they're not concerned about men being toxic. They're concerned about men who don't want to take responsibility, man up, get married. And by the way, those are the things that happen when we embrace masculinity, when we celebrate it. We end up with boys who become men who want to get married and provide and be courageous and protect their families. And that's really what women want.
You're a mom. You have boys, some boys thrown into that mix. You have a great, big, beautiful family. What is it like for you as a mom to raise boys? I have a boy on the way. And when I hear these things, it's a challenge because you have to bring them up in a society that feels really comfortable putting a negative label on them that they don't put on women. Do you have those conversations with your boys?
I do, and I'll tell you, one of the things that I started to notice as my oldest son went into junior high, and I have another boy now in junior high, if you go to award ceremonies, for example, at schools, you will see that almost all the awards, like 95% of them, are all going to girls. There's something happening, and I think boys are getting left behind even through the school system. As you said, I have a mix. I have 5 girls. I have 3 boys. I have lots of different toys laying around. I have Barbies. I have trucks. I don't teach my 3-year-old Patrick to play with trucks. He just naturally picks them up and wants to do them. And so one of the beautiful things about having a lot of kids and getting a lot of experience as a parent is you realize there truly are gender differences. And the people who are pushing this are people who either this idea or this notion of toxic masculinity are people who either hate men or really believe that gender is a social construct. They want to eliminate it. I'll say one thing, one other thing, because I just ran through this last night when I was looking through my feed. MTV, a network I used to work for back in the day, they now have a dating show where everybody in the dating show is gender fluid. There is definitely an agenda out there to eliminate gender. And one of the ways they're doing it is by targeting boys and saying that masculinity is toxic, bad, and it's part of a big agenda.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on something important. This is happening on campuses. It's happening in high schools. It's happening in colleges a lot, where boys feel like they have to battle this label that they've been given. So I'm curious to see how this plays out with Meryl Streep if she does walk it back. Really appreciate your input as always. And I'm going to be coming to you, Rachel, for lots of baby advice, so you better be ready.
I'm here for you, girlfriend.
Great. Awesome. Thanks for coming.
Against a political campaign is stunning to me, especially when the media doesn't seem to think that it's worth looking into. They're supposed to be the watchdogs of, our civil liberties.
That was Bill Barr blasting the media and the administrative state. Here to react to that, let's bring in Dan Bongino, Fox News contributor, former Secret Service agent, former NYPD officer, and host of the Dan Bongino Show podcast, as well as author of Spygate, the attempted sabotage of Donald J. Trump. Dan, thanks for being here this morning. So this was more audio from an interview with Bill Barr. He's been out talking a lot recently, swinging back at Mueller and folks. What do you make of this recent statement?
Pete, the left is absolutely terrified. Bill Barr was the perfect guy for this job to investigate this case because Bill Barr has nothing to lose. He is only in this for the truth. He does not care about history's judgment of his interpretation. He cares about the truth. And the truth, Pete, is terrifying. The truth is this, which I and many others have been saying for a very long time, Sarah Carter, John Solomon. The United States government, in conjunction with people on foreign soil connected to an intelligence infrastructure, spied on what we now know are innocent Americans in order to advance a political agenda and impact the election to hurt Donald Trump. That is no longer in dispute. How do we know that? Because the person they spied on, Carter Page, and the information they used to spy on him from foreign sources, by the way, led to absolutely nothing. Carter Page is an innocent man to this day. He has never been charged. That's what they're hiding. And there's a deeper story here, but it'll take me another minute or so.
Yeah, well, it might be the source of another book, and
you.
we'll be reading your next book.
Such a courteous guest, Dan. We appreciate
being
that.
kind to us. All right, another big story.
I didn't want to filibuster.
Yeah, right. The crisis at the border, of course. There's a new report out revealing apprehensions expected to reach a 12-year high in May. We've seen this exploding for a long time, and yet the courts, the Congress, have been blocking the president. We've seen that. And Democrats have said for a long time it was a manufactured crisis, and they've had to break that down as former Obama officials, more and more of them have come out and said, actually, it's a real crisis. There's a dispute about how to fix it. Now the president is talking about tariffs. What's your view?
You know, where the dam really broke on this, Ed, the whole Democrat focus group tested talking point that, don't worry, there's not a crisis, there's nothing to see here, was Jay Johnson. Of course, Jay Johnson being Barack Obama's former Department of Homeland Security head, who came out and said, listen, this is clearly a crisis. I mean, what were you going to do? Were you going to knock him and say he was politically motivated for saying that? He was Obama's guy. I think that's where it really broke. And the liberal media activists and their Democrat allies, you know, they're all symbiotic. They all live off each other in this kind of parasitic fashion sometimes. It's really kind of gross. And when Johnson said that, they had nowhere to go. It is now crystal clear this is a national security and humanitarian crisis, Ed. We have literally, not figuratively, thousands of people entering the country. We have no idea who they are. And people are coming here who need serious medical attention. You have children not prepared for the journey. It's a humanitarian crisis. And listen, they're running out of talking points now. It is a crisis. Everybody knows it.
Dan, you know, I have to get to my favorite story of the day, potentially my favorite story of all time. Hillary Clinton is going to speak as the keynote at a cyber security summit. I mean, if the jokes don't write themselves on this, I don't know when they will.
You know, it's what, 8:30 Eastern time in the morning, guys. I got to tell you, is this her? Is she re-entering the workforce, trying like giving it a shot at comedy? I mean, is this a joke? I said last night I was on Tucker for my News Explosion segment. I said, you know how they do TED Talks? You know, TED Talks are like 15, 20-minute talks on how to do something. This is the anti-TED Talk. This is like how not to do something. She goes to a cybersecurity conference, says, here's everything I did. And by the way, don't do any of that stuff. This is the anti-TED Talk for the ages. There's only two scenarios. Anti-TED Talk or Hillary Clinton's trying to get a Netflix comedy special to compete with like Dave Chappelle or something. I cannot believe this. I had to read this story twice. I thought it was the Babylon Bee or The Onion when I first saw it. I'm not kidding.
And Dan, we've got the guy on the couch here, Ned Henry, who asked her that original question.
Yes!
And she said, well, you wipe it down with a cloth. I mean, it writes itself.
Come on!
Pete, I have said to Ed, and he knows it, off the air many times, how does it feel to ask the single greatest question in media history of Hillary Clinton? You will be remembered for that question. And the response, what do you do? Like, wipe it clean? Like, you must have been like, is this serious? Is she really answering this way? I mean, how bizarre. And you know I've asked you that.
You have asked me, and you know there are viewers.
It was a great question.
Viewers to this day send me cloths with little stickums, little yellow Post-its that say, wipe it with a cloth. So you're not the only one.
Listen, you've had a storied career, buddy, but I got to tell you, that was your shining
That's the
moment. You
highlight.
did the job other media people were not willing to do. Ask a hard question.
We'll try to get some footage of her speech.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Dan, we always appreciate
Thanks,
you
Dan, for being here.
Yeah, guys, great talking to you. See you next week.
We're going to turn to some headlines for you now. Oklahoma is suing Johnson & Johnson in a landmark civil case. The state accusing them of fueling the opioid crisis. The father of Austin Box, an Oklahoma football star who died of a drug overdose, testified against the company. Both his parents joined us earlier, saying the pharmaceutical companies are downplaying the dangers of opioids.
If you're going to take an opioid, you need to be aware of the risks, particularly the risks of addiction. I know that was not really stressed by the drug companies.
Johnson & Johnson says their marketing of pain medications were appropriate and responsible. And your next trip to the pump might be lighter on your wallet thanks to President Trump. His administration announcing it will allow ethanol-rich gas to be sold all year long. The EPA previously ruled that the gas could only be sold between June and September. The change is expected to lower gas prices and help out corn farmers who can sell their crop to make ethanol. A suspicious person's call turns into a life or death scenario. Watch this.
Hey, don't move. There's a rattlesnake right next to you. Okay. Don't move. Okay.
Wow. A Tennessee deputy helping a couple flee a venomous serpent. He then gave the two a ride home. Experts say snakes are becoming more active in the warm weather. No, thank you.
There's
no,
a whole other question about why the two of them were laying in the middle of some road.
Listen,
and the
I
guy
don't ask
didn't have a
questions I
shirt
don't want
on,
answers to.
Maybe we don't want the answer.
There is more to that. Ed will investigate and get back to you.
Rick, you got any ideas?
Well, yeah, I'm from Arizona, so I'm fascinated with rattlesnakes. But I'm trying to figure out what kind of rattlesnake that was.
Yeah.
A terrifying one. That's all you need to know.
I'm thinking maybe like an eastern diamondback instead of western diamondback.
I have no
You guys
idea.
have any idea what I'm talking about?
No. Yes. Nothing.
Not.
No.
Okay, that's what I thought. That was probably the case. All right, take a look at the weather maps, guys. There's a lot going on, including today is the beginning of the hurricane season. Hate to say it is back. Places across Florida still have not recovered from last year's Hurricane Michael. And now here we are again with the beginning. Expecting kind of an average season this year. No bets on a higher activity than lesser activity this year. But we are watching one little area. It's down across parts of the Gulf of Mexico, actually in the Bay of Campeche, and it's now up to about a 50% chance of development into something more tropical over the next few days. The question is going to be, does that moisture make its way back up and across parts of the Central Plains? And there's a good chance of that. This is the last week. I want to tell you, this is the Mississippi River watershed. Any precipitation that falls in that area that you see is going to eventually end up down, if it doesn't absorb, it's going to end up back down in across parts of the Gulf of Mexico. We have flooding going on all across that area. Some cases, record-breaking flooding that we've ever seen. And this week, we are going to see more rain move in there. Some spots, probably another 5 to 6 inches across that same saturated ground. All right, guys, back to you inside.
All right.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
A Fox News alert right now, an update on that tragic Virginia Beach mass shooting. We're hearing from city leaders about those killed and what we just learned about the shooter.